My beloved child. Pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear was meant to find you before you moved on to anything else. There is a reason your attention was pulled toward these words at this exact moment. Something has been stirring quietly beneath the surface, something you have not been able to see with your eyes but may have felt in the sudden heaviness of your heart, in the unexpected memories that arrive without warning, in those strange moments when a certain person crosses your mind and you cannot explain why. Do not rush past this feeling. Your story has reached a delicate turning point, and someone connected deeply to your heart has been trying to gather enough courage to cross a distance that has existed for far too long. Your soulmate is trying to reach you right now, but the message they want to give you is not as simple as a few words appearing on a screen. Before any message is sent, there is a battle happening inside them. They have opened the conversation and closed it again. They have imagined your response, then frightened themselves with the possibility that you may no longer care. They have rehearsed sentences while sitting alone, only to erase every one of them because none seemed powerful enough to explain what they have finally understood. And there is something you do not yet know: this hesitation is not coming from a lack of love. It is coming from the terrifying realization that they may have waited too long. For a long time, they believed there would always be another opportunity. Another day. Another evening. Another moment when the circumstances would become easier and the words would somehow speak themselves. They told themselves that if the connection was real, it could survive silence. They convinced themselves that you would understand what they were unable to say. But something has changed inside them. The silence that once felt safe is beginning to feel dangerous. The distance that once allowed them to hide from vulnerability is now showing them exactly what they could lose. And tonight, in the quiet places nobody else can see, they are facing a truth they have avoided for longer than you realize. They miss you differently now. Not casually. Not temporarily. Not because they are bored or lonely. They miss the way your presence made them feel seen. They miss the emotional safety they did not recognize until it was absent. They miss conversations they once took for granted. They remember tiny details about you that would surprise you, the way you responded when something made you genuinely happy, the quietness in your voice when you were hurt but did not want anyone to know, the little changes in your energy when you sensed something was wrong. These memories have returned with unusual intensity, and every memory seems to carry the same question. What if the person I was afraid to choose becomes the person I regret losing? That question has become impossible for them to ignore. There was a time when they could distract themselves from you. They could fill their schedule, talk to other people, focus on responsibilities, convince themselves that emotions would settle if enough time passed. And perhaps from where you stood, their silence looked like certainty. You may have wondered whether they had simply moved forward without looking back. You may have questioned whether what existed between you meant as much to them as it meant to you. But appearances have hidden something much deeper. Their outward silence has concealed an inner conversation that never truly stopped. They have spoken to you 1,000 times in their imagination. They have told you what they should have said. They have apologized for things you may never have demanded an apology for. They have explained fears they were too proud to admit. They have imagined seeing you again and wondered whether your eyes would still hold the same warmth. And the most painful part is this: every imaginary conversation ends at the same place. They realize that imagining the truth is no longer enough. At some point, they must risk actually telling you. Yet before they do, heaven wants you to understand something about your own heart. You have changed. Perhaps you have not noticed how deeply, because transformation rarely announces itself while it is happening. But the version of you who once waited anxiously for answers is not the same version listening now. You have endured moments when you wanted reassurance and received silence. You learned how to carry questions without immediate answers. You learned that love cannot require you to abandon your dignity. You learned that somebody else's uncertainty does not determine your value. And although part of your heart may still remember them tenderly, another part has become stronger, quieter, and far more discerning. That change in you is exactly what they are sensing. They may not have words for it. They may simply feel that the energetic doorway they assumed would always remain open is no longer standing in the same place. They sense that you are no longer waiting in the way you once did. They feel that your life is moving, your heart is healing, your standards are changing. And this realization has created urgency within them because they understand something they once refused to believe: love can be real and still be lost through hesitation. This is where the story becomes deeper. Recently, something happened that forced them to confront what they truly feel. It may have seemed ordinary from the outside. A conversation. A memory. A photograph. A familiar song playing at an unexpected moment. Someone mentioning your name. A quiet night when distractions finally stopped working. Whatever form it took, the effect was the same. For a few moments, they could no longer run from themselves. They saw your connection differently. They remembered situations they had interpreted incorrectly. They remembered moments when you were trying to show them love and they were too guarded to receive it. They remembered the times you became quiet not because you stopped caring, but because you were tired of proving that you cared. They remembered how often you offered understanding while carrying questions of your own. And suddenly, pieces that had once seemed unrelated began fitting together. That realization shook them. Because they finally saw the difference between someone chasing them and someone genuinely choosing them. You were not trying to control their life. You were trying to understand whether there was space for you inside it. You were not asking for impossible perfection. You were asking for emotional honesty. You were not demanding that they have every answer. You simply wanted them to stop hiding behind uncertainty. And now they understand. But understanding something after distance has grown carries a particular kind of ache. It creates the awareness that an apology does not automatically restore what neglect damaged. It forces a person to recognize that love is not only measured by what lives inside the heart, it is also measured by what one has the courage to express. This is why their hand keeps moving toward the phone. This is why they keep imagining your name lighting up their screen. This is why they are wondering whether you would answer. Yet there is another layer they have told almost nobody. They are afraid you have met the version of yourself that no longer needs their explanation. That possibility frightens them more than rejection. Rejection would hurt, yes. But discovering that you have found peace without them would force them to acknowledge how much time was wasted. They are beginning to understand that you may no longer be standing emotionally where they left you. You may have forgiven things they never explained. You may have healed wounds they never apologized for. You may have stopped needing closure because you created your own. And paradoxically, your healing is pulling truth out of them. When you stopped forcing answers, they began hearing their own heart more clearly. When you stopped chasing clarity, their confusion became uncomfortable. When you stopped carrying the connection alone, they finally noticed how heavy their side had become. This is one of the mysteries of emotional growth. Sometimes people do not recognize the gift of your presence while you are constantly offering it. They understand it when the room becomes quiet enough for them to experience its absence. But do not misunderstand this message, beloved child. You are not being told to return to old patterns. You are not being asked to abandon boundaries or accept less than you deserve simply because someone misses you. This moment is not about surrendering your wisdom. It is about understanding what is moving beneath the surface so that, if communication arrives, you can meet it from strength rather than desperation. Something important is approaching. Your soulmate has been standing between two choices. The first choice is familiar: remain silent, protect their pride, convince themselves that if you truly belong together, destiny will somehow repair everything without requiring courage. The second choice terrifies them. Speak honestly, admit what they feel, reveal what they regret, and accept that your response cannot be controlled. For days, or perhaps much longer, they have moved between those two doors. But one door is beginning to close. They know it. That is why hope feels so fragile to them right now. There is a sentence they have wanted to tell you, and each time they consider saying it, their emotions become heavier. It is not simply, "I miss you." Those words would be easier. It is not merely, "I was wrong." Even that would not explain everything. The sentence is about what they finally understand you were to them. And before that sentence can be revealed, you need to know what brought them to this point. They recently imagined their future without you. Not dramatically. Not as some distant philosophical idea. They pictured ordinary life continuing while you were no longer emotionally present. They imagined birthdays passing, seasons changing, new memories forming. They pictured themselves succeeding in certain areas and instinctively wanting to tell you, only to remember that you might no longer be someone they could call. They imagined hearing that you had moved on completely. They imagined seeing happiness in your eyes that had nothing to do with them. That image stayed with them. It followed them into the quiet. And something inside them whispered, "Are you really willing to live with that?" For the first time, they could not answer yes. This is the shift you have been feeling. If you have suddenly remembered them without trying, if your emotions have seemed unusually vivid, if dreams or old memories have resurfaced, allow those experiences to remind you of your own unfinished feelings, but do not mistake every emotion for a command. You are still allowed to choose wisely. You are still allowed to observe actions rather than promises. You are still allowed to ask whether the person approaching you has truly changed or simply become afraid of losing access to you. Because the next chapter will require discernment from both of you. They are being asked to become brave enough to speak. You are being asked to become strong enough to listen without abandoning yourself. That balance matters. There is something else your soulmate has realized, something they never expected. They thought time would weaken the connection. Instead, time exposed it. They expected distance to make everything simpler. Instead, the distance removed distractions and revealed what remained. They discovered that certain people could occupy their attention without touching the part of their heart you reached naturally. They discovered that chemistry can be temporary, but recognition is different. They discovered that some connections are easy to replace because they were built only on convenience. But what they experienced with you left an emotional imprint they could not casually recreate. And this is precisely why their fear has become so intense. Because if you were merely a passing chapter, they could close the book. But you became a mirror. You reflected pieces of them they had avoided. Their tenderness. Their fear of abandonment. Their desire to be understood. Their habit of pulling away when emotions became real. Their tendency to test love instead of trusting it. They once blamed the intensity of the connection. Now they recognize that the intensity exposed wounds they had never healed. This realization has humbled them. They are remembering the moments when they misunderstood your patience as permanence. They assumed that because you had forgiven before, you would always forgive in the same way. They assumed your heart would remain available while they decided what they wanted. But love cannot live indefinitely in uncertainty. Even the strongest heart eventually learns to protect its peace. You learned that. And now they are learning it too. There is a quiet scene unfolding around them that you cannot see. Perhaps they are sitting in a room while everyone else believes they are fine. Perhaps they are lying awake longer than usual. Perhaps they are scrolling through old conversations or staring at your name without opening anything. Perhaps they deleted something they had written because vulnerability suddenly felt unbearable. But inside them, one truth is becoming louder. They do not want the last chapter between you to be silence. Listen carefully, because this is where the message changes. Their fear is no longer only that you will reject them. Their fear is that they will never forgive themselves for not trying. That is a very different fear. It means the energy has shifted from avoidance toward action. They are no longer asking only, what if they say no? They are beginning to ask, what if I never speak and spend years wondering what would have happened? That question has awakened something powerful inside them. Courage does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes courage looks like a trembling hand typing a message. Sometimes it looks like admitting, I handled this badly. Sometimes it means calling someone when pride insists you remain silent. Sometimes it means speaking without knowing whether the answer will comfort you. And your soulmate is closer to that edge than they have ever been. But heaven wants you prepared because the conversation they are contemplating may not begin the way you expect. They may not immediately say everything. They may start casually because they are frightened. They may ask how you are. They may mention something small. They may send a simple message that appears ordinary on the surface. Do not assume the first words reveal the depth of what is behind them. Sometimes the smallest knock is covering the biggest confession. There may be an entire emotional storm behind two simple words. And if that communication comes, watch what follows. Do they take responsibility? Do they speak clearly? Do they honor what you experienced? Do their actions match the tenderness of their words? Your heart deserves more than temporary emotion. It deserves consistency. This story is not asking you to become who you used to be. It is asking whether two people can meet again as wiser versions of themselves. And that answer has not yet been written. Your soulmate knows this. Deep inside, they understand they cannot return expecting everything to be exactly as it was. They know something must be different. They know you will need more than nostalgia. They know the connection cannot survive another cycle of closeness followed by retreat. This is why their next move carries so much weight. They are not only deciding whether to contact you. They are deciding whether they are finally willing to become emotionally honest. There is a difference. Anyone can send a message when loneliness becomes uncomfortable. It takes courage to reveal the truth when the truth may change everything. And there is one truth they have never fully admitted. They were not only afraid of losing you. They were afraid of how much you mattered. That may sound strange, but some hearts run most fiercely from what they secretly value most. When love begins touching old wounds, vulnerability can feel like danger. They may have pulled away because your presence awakened dreams they had stopped allowing themselves to have. They may have questioned the connection because accepting it would require trusting something larger than their usual defenses. You came closer than they expected anyone to come. And instead of opening the door completely, part of them panicked. Now the same door stands before them again. But this time you are not waiting outside it. You are moving forward. And that changes everything. The urgency you feel in these words is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to remind you that relationships have seasons, opportunities, and moments when truth must finally become action. Their hope is not disappearing because heaven has abandoned them. Their hope is becoming fragile because they understand that indefinite hesitation has consequences. They can feel the moment changing. They can feel you changing. And there is one specific realization that has pushed them closer to reaching out than anything else. Someone said something to them recently. A simple observation. But those words stayed in their mind long after the conversation ended. The person may not even have understood what they awakened. They looked at your soulmate and, in one way or another, challenged the story your soulmate had been telling themselves. Perhaps they asked, if you still care, why haven't you told them? Perhaps they noticed the sadness hidden beneath indifference. Perhaps they pointed out that pride had become a prison. Whatever the exact words were, they pierced through every excuse. Your soulmate had no answer. And in that silence, they remembered you. They remembered the last time they had the opportunity to be honest. They remembered what they almost said. They remembered the expression on your face. And suddenly, a truth they had avoided became undeniable. You had given them a chance to choose honesty before. They did not recognize it. Now they are wondering whether another chance exists. But this is where the mystery deepens, beloved child, because there is something about that final moment between you that they have never told anyone. Something they noticed. Something they misunderstood. Something that changed the way they behaved afterward. For all this time, you may have believed their silence meant one thing. But their silence was hiding something entirely different. And now, as they prepare themselves to reach toward you again, that hidden truth is becoming impossible for them to keep buried. They have written words they have not yet sent. Words about regret. Words about timing. Words about the future they secretly imagined. But one line stands apart from all the others. They keep reading it. They keep stopping there. Because once they send that sentence, you will finally understand what was happening inside their heart when they walked away, went quiet, or allowed distance to grow between you. And what that sentence reveals may change the meaning of everything you thought happened between you. Your soulmate is closer than you think to pressing send. But before they do, there is one last fear they must overcome. And it has nothing to do with whether you still love them. Their deepest fear is connected to something they believe you discovered about them during the silence, something they are convinced may have changed the way you see them forever. That is the truth, the